Well, is it surely if it
is it not stated we're not discussing about where they're directly at fault? You said it has to be justice and it has to be.
Do you accept our definition that you accept our criteria that we were looking for people to take responsibility for their negligence?
No, we agree with your value of justice.
Okay. You said that justice is hard to judge when it's not
in all cases.
Would you not agree that we already have variable fines, we have variable sentences for whenever someone commits a crime? You're not always going to get... You don't have...
True, but there are always different sides for when you have committed a crime. For instance, if a person is insane, he legally cannot be blamed for murder.
Yeah, so you agree that judges are therefore able to take circumstances into account and make a case-by-case judgment?
In some cases they are.
Okay, so you're questioning whether judges can make a case-by-case judgment?
I would say that in most cases they are capable of making such judgments, but there are other things that have to be taken into account.
Okay, so if we can make a case-by-case judgment, then we can surely deal with issues where, for instance, your mudslide, where it was preventable because it was no fault of theirs. Is that not acceptable for...
Well, if the company itself was not aware that the ground there was easy to damage with that much amount of water, they couldn't have known, so they couldn't
then you would agree that it would be fair to not punish them because it was entirely beyond their control.
Yes.
Yes, okay. You gave the example of China. Is China a country that has a real command economy that exerts a real influence over the decisions of companies, more so than, say, like America or Britain or Bosnia?
Well, we're not discussing which companies can actually do this. We're discussing that it's a principle that should be advised.
Would you not agree that if we've agreed that it's acceptable to judge things on a case-by-case basis, it is acceptable to judge things on a company-by-company basis?
It would be possible.
Yes, okay. So if China, as you said, is influencing decisions, surely therefore we agree. Surely the judgment lies with them.
It lies with the Chinese government.
Okay, so that would be a situation.
First of all, we really want to emphasise that we're talking about a direct physical damage. This was accepted by the opposition, and this is why cases of carbon being emitted cannot be applied. This is because when carbon is emitted, for example, which can lead to things such as acid rain, we cannot attribute blame to one sole company. For example, with acid rain, in an area in China, for example, in Sweden, for example, we don't know if it's a company in Sweden or if it's a company from the other side of the world, and therefore it's not a direct change. What we mean by direct, for example, is a company pumping waste into a river. There is obviously the company's fault there, or a company producing a product knowing that, say, a chemical inside a toy can cause cancerous effects if eaten or something. That's what we mean by direct effect. Now, to go on to some more points which were brought up in the second cross-examination, as well as the affirmative speeches, the opposition speeches, sorry. The opposition just admitted that judges can make case-by-case judgments, and therefore we're not saying at all that we can always blame CEOs. Of course, if the CEO has done everything right, the judge will find out that he did everything right. For example, the case of a mudslide. Now, this was a freak accident. They collected all of the information, and there was nothing they could do about it. And judges deal with this type of thing on a day-by-day basis, with, as my partner mentioned, in different forms of law. Now, their example of China as well is also void, because in this example, China itself is making the policy decision, not the CEO. And in that case, the government is in charge, China, not the CEO, because they're not the ones who are putting forward this policy. And therefore, again, this will be judged on a case-by-case basis. Of course, there are too many, as we agree with the opposition who stated that, not all cases are black and white. There are lots of things, there are lots of cases where there are grey areas. Now, the opposition accepts that executives are in charge of the direction of their company and where it's going. Therefore, this is what we mean by our first point, which is target those causing the problem on behalf of those suffering from their negligence. Now, we have to punish the people at the top, because as is being accepted, they're in charge of the company. They know where it's going. And just to reiterate, this is of course on a case-by-case basis. We're not always going to blame them. For example, my colleague mentioned piracy in Somalia. What happened in Somalia, in a certain area, as mentioned in a Telegraph article, was that fishing was a really big industry in this area, until a reckless company indiscriminately pumped in a lot of waste into this area. This meant that a lot of the people living in that area had to turn to crime, and in this case piracy, to reclaim some of the money which they've obviously lost because they no longer have a job. Now, our second point is the plan we're putting forward is the most effective way of getting these changes and meeting our value of justice, which we feel is taking responsibility of your negligence. People should be held to blame for what they've done wrong. Now, therefore, by aiming for the head of the corporation, we achieve a sense of corporate responsibility. For example, we got what the opposition had mentioned before is that we can't blame CEOs, but they didn't say who we blame. For example, if a car manufacturer produced a faulty car, you don't blame the workers of that car manufacturer, you blame the people at the top. They were in charge of this. You can't just go around blaming the workers because they're just following orders. Therefore, by prosecuting the head and enforcing that they must pay for what they've done and attribute changes, this is the only way that corporate responsibility can occur. And through corporate responsibility, we get to our third point, and this is a drive towards consumer responsibility, the bigger issue, the wider ramifications. Consumers will be more likely to act in a responsible manner if they know corporations are doing so as well. For example, in Indonesia, in the example my colleague mentioned, but in the shanty towns, they were pushed away from where they were originally living due to corporations, and they had to go look for jobs in towns, but then not have anywhere to live. Now, if corporations take responsibility for their actions, their pollutions which cause direct ramifications, then this will only mean this is the best way of creating a sense of responsibility throughout the procedure, and this is the way that consumer responsibility will take place. And for these reasons is why we hope that you propose our motion. Thank you.
You said that in the case of China, it's a government policy and not really direct physical damage because these emissions come from different companies. True?
That is what we said, yes.
Well, what if a town is close to a certain coal-fired plant, and this causes directly the plant to be responsible for the pollution in that town?
But the thing is, I'm sure there are cases where it's a main contributor, but it can't be. Unfortunately, with carbon, it's not quite as easy as pumping waste into a river.
Well, considering China's policies on energy and building technology, do you believe that carbon dioxide...
I actually don't know what policies you mean.
Well, their policies of building fast and new power plants that are not necessarily efficient. For instance, they don't